Hey there kids, it's me, Mr. Creepypasta, and before we get started on tonight's story, I'm going to tell you real quick about Chilling. Chilling's doing another giveaway, so I want to get this in here before the month ends so that you guys can get, a PlayStation 5. Chilling is a cool little app that I work for. They post horror stories similar to the ones you can hear here, except not just done by me. Yeah, I do stories for Chilling, but also so do a bunch of my friends. Some of the cool narrators that you guys know, like Autumn Ivy. And they have this cool little feature in there that allows you to choose your own ambient sound or background music, and that background music includes musical piano made by Mew, the guy who does piano music here. So you get to pick which ones you want to hear, whether it be thunderstorms or Mew or any other kind of ambient sound. It's a very revolutionary feature, and you can only do it there. So check it out in the link in the description down below, chillingapp.com, and it's available on Android and on Apple. Also, if you head over to chillingapp.com/PS5, you can enter to win a PlayStation 5 bundle. It's PlayStation 5 console with Horizon Forbidden West, MLB The Show 2020, a purple DualSense 5 controller, and the Sony charging station. So, all you got to do is just have the app, and then start your free trial, and then leave a review. And you could just win a PS5. So don't sleep on that, man. You could just get one. You'll just have one. Okay, yeah, on to tonight's story. Somehow, while trying to remove the lid of a rune-inscribed sarcophagus he'd found, my little brother had inadvertently broken his finger. I heard the crack, heard him sucking air, but figured he'd have enough sense to refrain from crying out, given the grave circumstances. My little brother, 18 years old, shouted out, "Yo, that fucking hurts!" And after another raspy intake of air, let loose a litany of more expletives, all of which loudly echoed throughout the vacious burial chamber. His friend Trent must have gone to him, because I heard shoes scuffle loudly towards the direction of the coffin, and my brother. I then heard Trent, presumably having seen my brother's busted finger, add his own curse-laden voice to the still echoing tone of my brother. I told them both to quiet down, reminding them that we had in fact trespassed upon the resting place of the nameless dead. And in response, Trent had the audacity to say, "Yo, chill!" As if I were the only one who'd shouted loud enough to wake the identity-stricken corpses. Of course, I hadn't actually believed this, at least not until I heard a nearby coffin splinter within its cobweb-draped alcove as something inside pushed against the tightly sealed lid. My brother, who I suppose I'll call Derek, for privacy's sake, then quieted down, as did Trent, and together, we listened. Fear-stricken, as someone else added their voice to the warning echoes of the teenagers. Its voice was low, but carried within it an incalculable agedness, a sorrowful depth of timbre, as if it had lain dead for untold cycles amidst the soundless subterranean darkness. Generally aware of where the other two were, I crept toward that area of the spacious yet lightless chamber, while the waking thing continued its deathly moans, apparently ignorant to our presences. Eventually, I bumped into one of them and managed to snap my hand onto their mouth before they could let out a startled cry. I whispered, "Shh, it's me." And the muffled response told me that I had found my brother. I heard, "Bro, you good?" whisper behind me, and pushed Derek towards Trent. I didn't want them bumping into me or falling over each other in the pitch-black darkness, and also knew that if things came to it, I'd have to defend them from whatever was reanimating nearby. I'm not terrified of the darkness, but I do find it severely unsettling, in a sensorial kind of way. Not merely because of the limited or lack of sight, but also because a sort of inner hollowness also seems to accompany darkness for me. I lose myself into it, no matter the surroundings. I guess you could call it vertigo, even though there aren't heights involved. While more people grow accustomed to it after a while, my senses of equilibrium and physical self only worsen the longer I remain without light. So I start to lose focus and swoon. So enshrouded in the complete darkness of the crypt, I wasn't exactly at my best. When I heard the thing's feet touch the stone floor, a sound that chilled the very marrow of my bones. I figured it may be able to throw an uncoordinated punch at best. But then an incredible thing happened. Just when the source of the dragging footsteps and horridly hollow moans seemed mere inches away, light burst into the room. Torches set in sconces lined the upper rim of the chamber, and all of them had flickered to life in an instant, revealing, among other sepulchral things, the sunken, death-blighted face of reanimated horror. 2 milky eyes, blind, mindless, yet somehow focused, sat within the deep socket. And between these were a fleshy divot where a nose should have been. There was a mouth, but it was toothless, having only a grayed, shriveled tongue, upon which rested a small bundle of teal eggs of some kind. For centuries, its skull had been the nesting place for some tomb pest. Its neck, shoulders, and chest were similarly ghoulish, horribly emaciated. Peep that drip. Straight gloom or fit. Trent absent-mindedly adjusted his hoodie upon noticing the undead's wretched attire. It had worn an assuredly elegant burial garment of some sort at one point, but time and the grave worms had faded and whittled this down to loosely held tatters, now nothing more than a ragged skirt hanging about its waist. But the most abominable thing about it, the most anatomically obscene feature, was the cavity in its abdomen, within which rested a large creature outwardly resembling a worm, only more akin to a big snake in size. Its skin was pale gray, though the coating of slime about it gave it a silvery glow. There weren't any appendages that I could see, but I did notice, between dry heaves, several eyes, grown seemingly at random, about its coiled form, some darkly pupilled and searching, others as dead and white as the eyes of its host. Whether or not the thing possessed a head was not immediately obvious. The whole body, which I estimated at being around 10 feet when uncoiled, throbbed with a sickening excitation, as if it had sensed the presence of fresher bodies, and was preparing to emerge. That shit's low-key disgusting. Trent's voice was shaky. He was clearly terrified. That ass, Derek said. Derek's voice, despite the circumstances, wasn't as jarred. I'm getting a real bad vibe right now. Apparently, the shock of his minor injury had numbed his mind a little to the horrors of the tomb. The zombie, lich, undead thing, whatever you'd like to call it, regarded us collectively with its vacant eyes, whilst the thing embedded within its abdomen continued to pulse and writhe. Sensing the advent of something horrible, I motioned for Derek and Trent to make their way towards the nearest edge of the chamber, toward the newly appeared circle of moonlight on the floor, immediately above which was the hole through which we'd fallen earlier in the night. Connected with the sorcerer's activation of the torches, the moon had appeared immediately above the tomb. The 2 teens silently complied, keeping their eyes trained on the undead horror. Without a weapon or means of defense, I had only my fists, hopefully superior dexterity with which to combat the worm. Worm-harboring corpse. Sensing, though not actually seeing movement, it turned its head, and I saw with new revulsion the intra-abominal creature mimic its movements, turning its worm-like body within the cavity. Slime and corpse fluid dribbled out in the motions, staining the floor blackly and sending up the most putrid flames I'd ever smelled. For a moment I was distracted, dazed by the miasmal funk, and in that brief lapse of focus, the cavity-resting worm sprang out, bursting from its host like a spring-loaded toy. I saw only a flash of silver before feeling it wrap itself around my neck. Its constriction was immediate and powerful, and my vision instantly reddened from the pressure. Derek and Trent let out simultaneous screams, but neither came to my immediate rescue. I was left helplessly clawing at the ever-tightening monstrous coil. Meanwhile, the reanimated corpse merely stood by, as if having literally only been a mobile vessel for the parasite, and thus rendered inert by the dreadful thing's absence. Desperate, knowing that I'd die before my companions snapped out of their youthful senseless and came to my aid, I decided to risk infection and disease in order to save my life. Mustering up what I could of my rapidly dwindling strength, I pushed the fat-bodied coil upwards and shed fresh tears as I felt my jaw shift alarmingly in the ever-mounting tension. Just before my jaw could be broken or torn from my head, I pressed the plumpest portion of the worm's body into my mouth, and I bit into it as hard as I could. Despite the power with which the thing had seized me, the actual skin of its body was fairly weak. My teeth sank into it easily, and a subsequent burst of juices caused the whole thing to deflate considerably in the next moment. The taste was indescribable. Some noxious, unpalatable admixture of bile and phlegm. It was both nauseating and spicy, somehow affecting my taste buds in a way that nothing else ever had. But still, I chewed on, and more of its vital filth gushed out. The eyes, at least, the few that I could see with its body pressed so close to me, blinked sporadically, even the pallid and pupilless ones. Finally, after I had chewed nearly through, the whole thing went limp, and the coils suddenly unwound themselves from around my body as if the muscles within had simply disintegrated. I tried to open my mouth and let the thing fall out, but my jaw, either due to the thing's constriction or my rabid biting, had been broken or misaligned, and I could only shift it so that some of the residue muck fell through my parted lips. The singular look of horror on Derek and Trent's faces was almost comical, and had I not nearly died, I would have mocked them for it. Derek, speaking first, stuttered out, "God, bro, I would have helped, but my finger, you know." Trent, feeling similarly ashamed, added on, "For real, I would have helped. But, you seem like you had it, fam. Jabon OP." No doubt suffering from some adverse psychoactive effect of the worm's blood, I shrugged, not feeling particularly bothered by their brief periods of cowardice. Before I could say anything, or rather mumble anything in response, the corpse suddenly came to life, as in, it regarded a little of its former animation, turning to me with some semblance of sentience. I backed away a little, not exactly scared, having been emboldened by my victory over the parasite, but also not wanting to fight something closer to my size. The corpse did not advance towards me. Instead, it raised its hand in a gesture suggestive of peace. This dude's vibe's different now. I think he's friendly. Threw a dubious glance at Trent, who slowly approached the corpse. Derek, thankfully, remained at the spot beneath the hole in the ceiling. The corpse turned to Trent, repeating the peace-offering gesture, and Trent mimicked it. Satisfied, the corpse nodded and turned back towards me, and I performed the ham sign as well. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Derek do his part, though the corpse did not seem to require it for him, with him being so far away. For a moment, it seemed still, as if it had lapsed back into a state of necrotic dormancy. But then its thinly attached jaw lowered somewhat, and a voice issued from the ghoulish maw. "Thank you for relieving me of that pest. Have you not trespassed upon this tomb? That vermin would have nested within me for eons, stoking the embers of my spirit to feed off them as sustenance, never to let me rest. It would have fed upon me indefinitely, for it was, by all practical measures, immortal, and so too would I have been had you not drawn it out of my body. The vitality of your form must have been irresistibly enticing to it. I am glad that you are not overwhelmed, even if it would have been existentially profitable for me. Now I shall rest. But first, I will do you a service, as you have done for me." Striding past me with surprising swiftness, the corpse then seized one of the sarcophagi and lifted it, as effortlessly as it had hefted a bunch of clothing. Then, with a Herculean ease, it carried it to the spot beneath the hole in the ceiling, waiting for my brother to step aside before gently setting it down. "You may use the higher elevation granted by this to exit through the hole. Again, thank you for your assistance, even if it was involuntary and born of sepulchral irreverence. I now bid you farewell. Eternal rest awaits me." The benevolent undead then crawled into the alcove from which it had emerged and entered into a deeply restful sleep. Trent, a broad smile across his face, said, "Bro, that's a mood." Derek, resting against the sarcophagi, added, "Sleep well, Zomboomer." Exhausted and admittedly a little drunk on worm slime, I concluded through gritted, slime-covered teeth. Night-night. Both of their heads turned to me. One of them was climbing up through the hole. The moon was high in the sky, its far-spread lunar brilliance a welcome change to the shifting shadows and the eerie torchlight of the tomb. Nerve-wracked, haggard, and variously injured, we staggered out into the ancient, communally forsaken cemetery. The one I hadn't wanted to come to, but they insisted on my presence. I'm glad I did. Otherwise my brother and his dopey friend probably would have died. But that would be the last time that I go exploring abandoned graveyards. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I wanted to tell you thank you so much for watching today's video, or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. If you're listening on the podcast, then hey, thank you for subscribing to the podcast. If you're not watching on the podcast or watching on YouTube, I'd appreciate if you subscribe to the YouTube, because both are very good. They're important to me. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who's out there on the Patreon, patreon.com/MrCreepyPasta, and to everybody who's already a part of it, and even giving just $1. Thank you guys so much for making it possible for me to be able to continue to do this, and even be able to get some exclusive stories that we only have here on the channel, and you can't find anywhere else. So a big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Reaper61167, Bobby Karman, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, Atomaurus, Grand Moth the Milky, Big Smoke 369, Michael Mcivor, Captain Scurvy, SaltyIrishPoet, Estebean, Brayden Morris, Nate Kuhl, HorrorFan1212, hourminsec Time, Kyle Reznak, David Martin, scare-ington the unkempt, Robert Malcolm, Angelus, Spanky, Snoochie Boochies, Seclude, Lupita Galvan, That Creepy Chick, Tyler Fletcher, Merxenum, Red Shadowcat, Xavier the Cheyenne, Demix, Shawn Cadieu-baker, 6 Gay Rats in a Trenchcoat, Turtleman, Rob Like Sharp Thing, Chaos Arts, Cryolinian, Xavier Graffius, Lord Life's Best, Goreng Trimagasi, Maria Walker, Emily Mitchell, Crazy Kid, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Ika Limchok, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Coffee Zombie, Hidden Tiger, Shelly J, Jeremy H, Psychomel, Nana, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tully Sue, William King, David Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Sashi Suzaku, Cronut 509, Kaylee Ambrose, Suji Campbell, Strickett, Azarine Fox, Freddy Krueger, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades' Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Benjamin Welvert, Here with the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. My goodness, the list is getting long. But hey, I appreciate all of you. And everybody down in the description, and everybody who's a part of the Patreon, period. Thank you guys so much for making this happen, for getting treats for Hercules and Hylas, and helping me keep the lights on around here. And to everybody who watches and subs and likes and leaves comments and does all those things, sweet dreams.